All right, so the next data type in JavaScript is the null data type. So this one's a bit tricky, so bear with me on this. I'm going to declare a null variable and show you how it looks, and then we're going to kind of talk about what null means and like what's the context of whenever you would use a null value. So to declare a null value, you simply do the following. You do variable, and then you say null value, or whatever you want to name your variable, and you just set it equal to the text null. And then you put a semicolon at the end of the line, and that declares a variable that is null. If I click run and if I type into the console null value, I get the value null back. So that is how we declare a null value. So again, null is the intentional absence of a value. So if a programmer wants to represent this, a common use case is, say you're like logging into Facebook or to a website, and you type in your username and say Facebook or somebody or whatever website you're on cannot find your username. So what happens there is a computer went to go check to find your username, but it couldn't find it. So the computer returned back a value of null saying, hey, there is no value for this user currently. So then a programmer on the UI side of things could respond and say, hey, there's an error, we couldn't find you, so let's go help you recover your password. So again, null is just the intentional absence of a value. Whenever we want to say, hey, there's nothing that we want to assign here right now. So in the last video, we did the type of trick, where we kind of check the type of a variable. You're going to notice something a little bit weird here in the case of this null data type. So if we did type of null value, we're going to get not null like we would expect. So we're not gonna get the value null like we would expect. We're gonna get actually a value of object, which is kind of weird. Looking at Mozilla's developer network, we can see some really important thing right here. So there's a difference between null and undefined, but when you do type of null, we get object, and they're saying that is a bug in ECMAScript and that it should be null. So the reason why this happens is because it's written as a literal, like an object literal, and that object literal exists, and the language is trying to figure out what it is. So because we're using like the current version of JavaScript, we get object back, but in the future it's going to be changed to null most likely. So it's a little confusing thing in the JavaScript language, but we'll be able to kind of we'll learn how to deal with it later whenever we learn about conditional checking and equality comparisons. So I know it was a lot of a mouthful for just no value, but it's a kind of confusing concept that we need to understand as programmers moving forward with our programming careers.